Welcome to Fave podcast, episode 29. In these podcasts, I interview friends, family members, colleagues about their backgrounds. We talk about the Fave topics, and we share a couple of stories. Today, I'm joined by Curtis Conley. Curtis and I worked together at Deloitte starting back in 2008, and I've been friends with him since then. Curtis, welcome to the Fave podcast.
Thanks for having me, Stan.
Let's start out by talking about your background. When and where were you born?
I was born in Bluefield, West Virginia in 1982. I think the hospital is now torn down, but that's where I was born.
And what's your ancestry?
A little bit of mix of everything from what I can tell. I did a 23andMe just to try to figure out a little bit more about my background, and there's a lot of Eastern European, Irish, none of the things that like we thought we were going to find in there. So that's been fun to kind of figure that out a little bit. But there are like some like fun little things where it's like, a couple percent Ashkenazi Jewish, like about like 1% Iranian. Like there's some little things in there. I'm like, oh, I want to know more about that. But yeah, no one knows anything. So
So you can claim a lot of different cultural identities.
that's right. Yeah.
Is there anything that's the majority percentage?
I think just broadly, I think is what they call like the Eastern European or
Okay,
British and kind of, yeah.
okay, got it. Where have you lived since you were born in West Virginia?
A little bit all over. Early part of my life was West Virginia, Virginia, Kentucky. So I lived around that area until about fifth or sixth grade, and then we moved to Illinois. And so Illinois was kind of my adopted home. So when I talk about where I'm from, I usually say Chicago just for shorthand.
Hmm.
But like you lived in Illinois for a little while, Michigan, back to Illinois. Florida, back to Illinois, and then California for a little while, and then we've been in Madison now for about 7 years or so.
So do you think of yourself as a Midwesterner? In particular, is it Wisconsin or Illinois that you identify with more?
Probably Illinois,
Okay.
but yeah, especially as a Bears fan in a Green Bay Packers state. But yeah, definitely Midwestern in terms of kind of like in any Midwestern meme that I see, I recognize myself and my friends and everyone else in that. Yeah.
Who was in your family when you were growing up?
It was just me, my mom, and my dad. So I was an only child, which, made it easier when we're moving every year or so from like, bouncing around and things like that. So not too much to compete with in terms of like siblings or anything.
Did you have any extended family anywhere near wherever you lived?
Yeah, when we lived kind of like in Appalachia, like I had my grandparents and other some family members in West Virginia, and so we go visit for the holidays and things like that. Visit them periodically, and then still even when we lived in Illinois, would try to get down to visit them occasionally.
What did your parents do?
So growing up, my dad was like in operations for a bread company, and essentially that's kind of why we moved so much. Is he'd fix one factory or area, and then we'd move to another, and we moved to another. So we moved around quite a bit. But then once we got to Illinois, he started in sales for like home improvement companies, so windows, sidings, doors, things of that nature. And then eventually got into, I think, training. So teaching other sales folks how to like do the sales process and things like that. And so I think that's kind of like where his focus has been like on training and learning in that area for a long time. My mom did like a lot of different things. So she was a seamstress. She, was a waitress, but then she also did like a lot of work, like before she kind of retired as like a baker. So like different cookie shops and things like that. So.
Did this translate into you having good baked things at home?
There were a few good things, yeah. Like I think baked goods is probably like the top of the list in terms of like what we got at home. But yeah, so I know especially around like the holidays, like she would make like peanut butter balls, which were really good for me because like my biggest candy weakness is probably the Reese's peanut butter cups.
Hmm.
And then actually like my grandfather, so her dad would also make fudge, and that was kind of the thing that he would send everyone for Christmas, and that's kind of the only thing anyone wanted was for him to sit and make his fudge. And
Hmm.
so we uh all look forward to that. And so my mom's tried, making it, she's better at it than I am now. But like I actually did that one of my last visits to see my grandfather down in West Virginia. He showed me how to make it, and did the whole process, and I sat and documented it and asked him as many questions as I possibly could, and also try to explain to him that this is a little taste of knowledge management that he could like wrap his mind around, where it's just kind of like, all right, I'm trying to get as much knowledge extracted from you as I possibly can, but I'd say still probably 1 in 5 times I actually make it the way it should be made.
Hmm.
4 out of 5, it kind of not so good.
So do you have one of those big marble slabs that you see at fudge shops?
No, but I do have a giant cast iron pan because according to him, it can only be made in cast iron, otherwise it doesn't come out right. And it may or may not be true, but who knows?
When you were in school, what did you like to do?
I think I was really into just riding my bike. I think that was a big one for me. I liked
Mhm.
exploring. So for me, it was a lot of time spent just kind of going into the woods, seeing how far I can ride and get back home without getting into trouble. But that was like what I spent a lot of my time doing. But just in school in general, like I really like computers, and art class, things like that. I was really into reading, so I've always been kind of a voracious reader. And so like that was something that was very early on. But math was never my thing, and continued to be my bane from elementary school up into college. So yeah, that never left me.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't think I ever really knew. Like that was kind of like one of those things where everyone that I was around like did different jobs and things like that, but I never really saw myself in any of the things that they did. And so it was nice when I was in community college in Florida. So I did an associate's degree down in Florida, and there was a really good college kind of career center there. And the person that worked there, she had actually set me up and said, "Okay, well, what are some of the things that you're interested in?" And I was like, I've got some like crazy ideas, but I don't know if I like them or not." And so, looking at doing digital art is very differently. Also, what about a career with the FBI? Like that seems interesting. So I was just naming all these things, and she actually went through and looked at other people that had gone there that did those careers, and so she hooked me up with them to kind of either talk to them or in a couple instances kind of shadow them for a day just to see if that was a career space that I would be interested in. And it kind of helped shape things a little bit for me in terms of okay, I really like doing digital art, for instance, but maybe this is more of a hobby for me because when I go there and I look at like, okay, well, just the process of saying, hey, I'm an expert in art, I understand everything that I'm doing, and my clients come to me and ask for something. I give them something that I know is effective and will be great, but they push back or they make some very weird requests that make it not great. And so you can see there's like a lot of battle there. And I'm like, I don't know if I'd like that so much. And it also there was an FBI center kind of near Orlando and so, or Tampa, and met with them. And the guy there was saying, there was a lot that was really interesting about the job, but part of it is, tomorrow there can be a thing to come down and say, actually, you know what, we're not going to relocate you. You're going to be in North Carolina or Germany or somewhere else tomorrow. So there was like not a lot of, I don't know, predictability with the role. And so to that, and I was like, all right, I didn't really love moving every single year growing up. So it's like
Mhm.
I'd like to be able to be in control of that as much as I
Yeah.
can. So maybe that's not a path for me. So let me keep exploring. And so I just broadly went into to get a business degree, and I was like, all right, well, I'll figure it out as I go along. So that's kind of how I figured it out.
So tell me about your college. You started out in community college, and then where'd you go, and then where'd you go after that?
Yeah, so after high school, my parents moved to Florida, and I was like, great, I'd love to move to Florida. Let's check that out. Warm weather and kind of a new place to be. I had never even visited Florida, so for me, in my head, I was thinking, all the TV shows that I've seen, and it's Miami, and then you go down there and you're like, oh, this is actually kind of the deep South. I didn't think about that. So, and then the bugs are ginormous and it's humid, and I'm like, all right, maybe Florida's not for me, but I'll finish up my degree here. So I went to Seminole Community College, which I think is now Seminole State College, and had great professors there. It was actually a really fun school. Learned a lot of the things that I like to do and not like to do. And then transferred up to Northern Illinois University. So that's kind of where I went to finish my bachelor's degree. And
Mhm.
so I got that in organizational management. And it was during one of my strategic management classes that a professor started talking about communities of practice and knowledge management and kind of piqued my interest because a lot of what he was saying really jived with like some of the things that I've been doing since high school, managing online websites for bands and building them and curating content and developing online communities. And I'm hearing him talk about this, and I'm like, oh, I've been doing this for free and getting into free concerts, and that's been my payment. I'm like, people pay you for this. Like this is a real job. And so from that point on, it's like now I know what I want to do when I grow up, and so it made a lot of sense. So I finished my bachelor's there, and then actually went right into an MBA program and finished that oddly in 6 months because I just wanted to see how quickly I could do it. And so that burned through that one very quickly, and then went actually. That wasn't the plan to stay at NIU for all of this, but then ended up going into their doctoral program for adult education. And part of that was because I knew I wanted to focus on knowledge management. The technical software side of things interested me and always came very natural. So it wasn't an area where I was like, okay, I need to focus on management information systems or anything like that. I was like, let me focus more on the people, process, learning side of things because that's more of a gap for me and also more interesting. And I think kind of like where you can really put a lot more pressure and get a lot more success. And so that was a really fun and interesting, informative program for me. It was probably, I think, where I felt I learned the most out of all the coursework that I've done, and it was great because they had a part of the program was focused on human resource development, and within that, I was able to build a cognate and knowledge management by taking as a very multidisciplinary field knowledge management, I was able to take courses from different parts of the grad schools that kind of built that to say, okay, like this gives me background in this gives me background in this, and so I feel like I have a solid structure to build with. And very, very lucky because my dissertation chair at the time, she had had a background in knowledge management, organizational learning, had done some kind of publications in that space. And so it was great to have her as kind of a mentor and to help me early on in the program figure out where I wanted to focus. And oddly enough, the first professor whose class in undergrad introduced me to the subject, he also ended up being on my dissertation committee, which was funny because for a long time I was like, it was the toughest class I took. I don't hope I never have him again. I had him again in my MBA, and then of course he got to make my life a little bit of a living hell as part of my dissertation committee. So, but it was worth it because he would push you. It was a very, very, very good teacher in that way, and a lot of the lessons that like I learned through the process with him as well too was just kind of like, okay, these are lessons that I have for the rest of my life. But so it was worth the pain bringing him on to that.
So you got an EDD. How long did that take?
So I did the coursework about a year and a half, so I burned through that really quickly as well too. Because part of it was, being in class with like folks that were, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. I could see how hard it was taking one or two classes at a time. So in my mind, I was like, well, let me, while I've got nothing else going on, just really dive deep and focus on this and really like, try to learn as much as I can. And so that's the approach that I took. And part of me wants to go back and just do like another degree in something else just to kind of get that other experience.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did the coursework at about a year and a half and then started working. And so it was tough to do the dissertation and work. And, also being in the city of Chicago, going back to DeKalb, Illinois for dissertation meetings and things like that, that took a little while. So all in all, it was about 2000, it was about 5 years from the point that I finished my MBA to the point that I actually finished doing my dissertation. And part of that might have just been the ADHD that prevented me from actually like buckling down and getting the
Mhm.
damn thing done. But all in all, it was good to wrap that up.
So now, where did you go to high school?
I went to high school in Naperville, Illinois.
Okay, Naperville High.
Naperville North, yeah. There are a lot of schools there, and it's funny even now, like just how much the area has grown. There's like, oh, there's another gigantic 4,000 person high school that's like popped up. So yeah,
Now, after you transferred into Northern Illinois, how did you settle on the specializing in organizational management?
it seemed the most interesting to me, and so I will say that like the professors that I had in Florida, the ones that really resonated the most with me were like I really liked economics. I really liked some of I really liked physics and calculus, and so like the harder math got, the easier it got for me for some reason. So like I was like, all right, well, I'll do something like in business, like just generally thinking that like I'll go in there because most of the classes seem to be the most interesting sounding ones to me.
So, what was your thesis, your dissertation about?
That was really looking at what makes knowledge management successful in an organization. And the question that I had was in the literature, there was a lot of lists, like here are the top three things to focus on, or the top 10, or, it always seemed to be a top 10 list, right? And I was like, all right, well, why is it that? Like, why isn't it 11 things or like seven, right? Like, where do we arrive at this from? And so I started looking at the concept of critical success factors being those areas where if things were to go right or wrong, it really depends on these key items. And so the lists, there was a lot of similarity between them, but there was also like a lot of differences. And so I really wanted to investigate that. And so I looked at surveying both scholars and practitioners of knowledge management, with the idea being that is there a difference between what scholars think and what practitioners believe? And so I tried to get as big of a sample size as I possibly could, reached out to anyone that had published on the subject of knowledge management, probably committed some faux pas by messaging the same request to complete a survey in every knowledge management online forum and community that existed at the time, not realizing how rude that was, that a lot of people belonged to the same ones. But I really tried to get a big spread there, and then to look at the results that came back and say, okay, does it matter if we ask them to rank them or list them in order? Like, do we do a force rank? Like, what are the differences between those? Does it matter or your organizational background or size is? Does it matter what country you come from? Is there because there, one of the theories was there's an overrepresentation of North American kind of bias in literature, and so does that influence things? And so it was really fun to be able to go through and do a lot of that because what I ultimately wanted to do was come up with a model that I can, come up and say, okay, here are the critical success factors or some of the major ones, and you can look at seeing how it creates either a virtuous or vicious cycle depending on kind of like where you are, and maybe you can plug in your organization, your organization size, your organizational background, things of that nature to really plug in and see, okay, what are the things I should really focus on in knowledge management? And so, in order to develop that model, I had to first kind of do this more generalized study to normalize kind of what the critical success factors were. And so, like, I went through the literature of like ERP and a lot of other related disciplines to try to understand, like, knowledge management publications have been, at that point, 20, 30 years have been really looking at this, but some of these other subjects have been looking at it for 30, 40, 50. And so maybe their studies or their models of critical success factors are a little bit more advanced. So I tried to bring some of those into the knowledge management literature and come up with some ideas for what good looks like.
Was there an overall insight that you got from that work?
It was interesting because there were a lot of assumptions that there were going to be big differences between what scholars and practitioners thought, what people from different countries thought of in terms of like the top critical success factors. And while there were some statistical differences here and there, overall, most people kind of thought the same. And so, and I didn't end the study by giving like a list of the top 10 or anything like that, given how much I had kind of criticized that approach. But
Yeah.
I did try to bucket them in terms of saying like these seem to be the ones that are the most consistent across that don't have
Mhm.
any variability. And then here are some others that are in the mix that could be for you a critical success factor, but might not be.
So you indicated that you were already working when you were working on your degree. So what was your first full-time job?
My first full-time job, yeah, out of grad school was working at Perkins Eastman, which was an architecture, construction, and interior design company. They were based primarily out of New York, but they had multiple offices around the globe. And so I was the first knowledge management person in the Chicago office. And I also kind of had responsibilities for knowledge management for Toronto, Oakland, and then eventually Dubai as well.
Okay. And so take me through your career then. After you started there and you were still working on your doctorate, then when did you move on to the next job and take us through the sequence that followed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Perkins Eastman was a great start because I had a fantastic team there, and very scrappy in terms of maybe we don't get funding to do all the things that we want to do, but we'll find a way to do it. And so it was fun being able to do a lot in the knowledge management space there, both with mm, communities of practice and managing those, creating intranet portals, managing kind of like an overall CRM, getting experience with mobile technology. Even early in those days, we won kind of a couple intranet innovation awards with that. And so, like that was like a lot of really, I think, boots on the ground. Okay, we're doing knowledge management now. We're moving from theory to practice, and this is a lot of fun. And then I moved into kind of consulting space, working at Grant Thornton for a little while before starting up at Deloitte, where I was able to meet you and work on your team eventually. Because I think it was interesting when I applied at Deloitte, there were two roles that I really liked, and so there was a role working on the kind of like people data team, like working for the knowledge exchange product, the profiles team, which I had done a little bit of at Perkins Eastman, and then also working on communities. And so I applied to both of them, and they're like, "Well, how about we give you a role where you get to do a little bit of both?" And so that's how I initially split my time there. Really like working on that, working on communities. You were a good manager, so I really appreciate that. And so yeah, I enjoyed my time there. And then it was around that time. It was funny. I remember we were looking at what other discussion board products besides SharePoint exist out there in the world, and we were looking at, remember, like Blue Kiwi and some other really random ones at the time. And so that was about the time that Yammer and Socialcast and some of these other enterprise social networks started to expand and come on the market. And so it was interesting. Like when I ended up leaving Deloitte, it was to move over to Kellogg to kind of work on their products. So they had NewsGator at the time, but then really they were also looking at doing like a lot more modernization with their approach. And so we eventually brought in Yammer there and replaced NewsGator with that. And similarly, that's how I transitioned over to Amgen after that, working in both at Kellogg and Amgen in the IT teams. And the whole idea there was I'd seen early in my career that sometimes IT makes decisions that stymie knowledge management later on. So I'm wondering if I can go into IT with the knowledge management hat on, maybe I can make good decisions and instead of kind of building dams down at the bottom to shape the course of the river, maybe I can change it with a spade up at the head. So I think I had some successes and some not successes in that space, but it was fun being able to work within IT, give me some more background on the management information system space, and then eventually started working on managing enterprise applications, collaboration teams at Amgen, and then later at Zendesk, doing more intranet implementations, help center revitalizations, things of that nature. And then the last company that I was at was at Blend, and so like that was a KM lead role. And I feel like that kind of like harnessed everything that I had done up until that point. So I got to do a lot around consolidating the enterprise application space, making that a little bit easier for people to work and find information. Working on bringing in Glean as like a search application. So I really enjoyed that role, getting to work and impact the entire organization. And then AI descended upon the world, right? And so I think everybody's focus shifted around that time. But since then, I've been working at LinkedIn in the internal knowledge management team for the global business organization. So focusing on kind of sales and go to market and trying to make sure that their knowledge is easy to find, accessible, helping them now optimize for AI so that we can start building agents to help people solve a lot of the challenges that they have and kind of interject AI when and where we can.
So, in those different jobs that you outlined for us, how did you decide, that it was time to move on to the next one?
Um, a lot of my life has been serendipitous. I will say that. So there's been a lot of whether somebody reaches out about a role and they're like, "Hey, we think you'd be really interested in this," and I go, "You're right, I am really interested in that. Let me take a look at that." In some cases, it's just been, corporate layoffs where it's like, okay, we're restructuring, or you have an opportunity to keep your role and move somewhere you don't want to move, and it's like, I'll pass on that, so it's time to move on and look at something new. At Blend, for instance, it was, interest rates were really going crazy, skyrocketing, and that was a fintech company focused on mortgages, so maybe not the greatest time for that. So there was a lot of like forced moves here and there, but for the most part, it really has been new roles pop up that sound really interesting, and that seems like something that I want to pursue. So yeah, it's been a little bit mix of both of those.
Okay. And you've moved a few times, right? You started in Chicago and you did live in California for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. So after Kellogg, we moved to California for about 4 years, and so like that was we were in Southern California. I really liked the area, and in the end, like that was they were shutting down. They were doing kind of centralizing a lot of their services. They were moving IT functions out of California, and some of the other locations that they were moving to, I wasn't a fan of. So
Hmm.
that's what actually moved us out of there. But I really enjoyed the desert warm air, no mosquitoes. There's a lot, no
Yeah.
snow. There's a lot to appreciate out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And then you moved to Madison after that?
Yeah, because I think we've got three small kids, and at the time there was a lot of, okay, well, we're gonna make the trek to LAX and fly all of us back for the holidays, and then we're bringing three car seats and all the kids stuff, and you've got dogs and everything, so it's like, all right, this is kind of a hassle. So maybe while the kids are young, we'll relocate back to the Midwest to be around family and things like that. So we're pretty much a short ride away from friends, family all over Wisconsin and Illinois and things of that nature. So it's a little bit more convenient in that respect. Yeah.
Got it. Where in California did you live?
I lived in Simi Valley, which was kind of like in the Ventura area, so kind of
Hmm.
northwest of LA. And
Yeah.
it's funny, when the recruiter reached out to me about the role there, because I wasn't looking for jobs at the time, they reached out during the middle of a polar vortex in Illinois, and I was like, "Tell me more about Southern California." Yeah, that made the conversation a little bit
Yeah.
easier. Yeah,
Helped with the recruiting.
that's right. That's right.
Um, what are some hobbies and interests that you enjoy?
Well, I mean, one of the ones that I love the most, and one of the things I missed the most about California was hiking. The house that we had there was, perfectly right next to a trailhead, so it was great to be able to, in the mornings before anyone else woke up, go on, a nice hour and a half hike. I'm 10 minutes away from being near zero humans and just being able to be out in nature and, keep your head on a swivel for the mountain lion that lived in the area. But otherwise, it was really fun. But yeah, there's beautiful, beautiful hiking there. I really, really loved that. There's a lot of great nature in Wisconsin, some good state parks and things like that. So I really enjoy getting out in nature, camping. To that end, I've started. I like taking on new hobbies that I don't have any background in to try to like
Hmm.
learn from scratch. And so one of those was about 3 or 4 years ago. I got a old Bronco, and then eventually I just swapped it for an old Jeep Cherokee, with a little bit easier to work on. Parts are a little easier to find. And so I've been slowly restoring that and trying to, make it really comfortable, fun ride. My oldest daughter, she's a couple years away from driving still, but she's already called dibs. She wants it. So it's fun, not having any kind of mechanical inclination whatsoever,
Hmm.
but being able to leverage Reddit and YouTube. There's a lot that you can learn and a lot you can do on your own. So like that's been satisfying to take this very ugly, misshapen thing and turn it into like a really nice, fun ride that I've kind of use it for my around town, but then primarily it's used for camping and kind of outdoor excursions and things like that. But and then, inside, during the pandemic was really interesting because you couldn't really get out and do a whole lot. And so try to invent some new indoor hobbies. I'm not too much for painting or other arts and crafts or things like that, but I got really into watching aquascaping videos. So you see the aquarium behind me. I've got another
Hmm.
one in the other part of my office. Um, I really like the idea of natural soil and plants and how do you create these ecosystems that are really kind of self-sustaining as much as possible. So getting very much into learning the chemistry of it and what how the nitrogen cycle works inside of there and how do you create like a good balance and automate things so the lights come on and off and change like periodically. So that's been really fun, challenging, but like rewarding once you kind of get the hang of it.
Hmm.
So that's been like a fun hobby to get into because it's fun to just kind of see things flourish and grow and especially also when the pandemic happened. Speaking of learning things on YouTube, I'm not handy, but like I did finish my home office, so like this was an unfinished part of the basement, and so I was like, okay, we're gonna have some kids home for the foreseeable future. I'm gonna need to be able to work from home. I need to, and so I was like, let me soundproof this as much as I can so I can play music, listen to music, I can be on calls and be loud and noisy and not disturb other people, and then I also don't have to hear the dogs barking and other things happening in the house. So I finished this office, and there's no windows in here, so I was like, okay, I can't get plants to grow, so I'll have to go with aquatic plants. So that was how I shifted that.
I
But, yeah.
see. So, any other hobbies like the car restoring that you took up without any particular background or aptitude and then got better at?
Um, I think I want to say guitar, but I don't know if that qualifies because I don't know if I've gotten better at it.
Okay.
I've always liked playing guitar, but like it's
Hmm.
not been something that I'm particularly good at. Partially because I'm like half deaf in one of my ears and don't have a good sense of tune. But I enjoy playing. Yeah,
Okay. Let's talk now about the Fave 5 topics. You already mentioned that you like to read. What do you like to read?
a little bit of everything. I really like fiction, so like that's a big space for me. I really like Stephen King's been a huge author. I've started reading him when I was in second grade, for better or for worse. And so I really like a lot of the Stephen King novels. I like the giant themed universe where everything in one book might touch on something else. So you see these little Easter eggs pop up. And then similarly, I really like fantasy. So Brandon Sanderson's really good. He has got a giant Cosmere universe, and then there are multiple stories and books that kind of fit in within that. So it's very rewarding to spend. If you're reading a book that's this thick, it's really rewarding that it builds up over time and connects to like a larger story that's taking place and shaping over many years. And so that's been fun. But I also will read collections of poems. I'll read one of the things that I'm doing right now is reading. When I say reading, I'm really saying audiobooks is kind of like a big focus for me. I really like audiobooks, but like I'll actually read real books too, but primarily audiobooks. But there's one of the it's called the Great Courses Big History. And so like that's like a really interesting one because it looks at the history of everything and it tries to take on different scales. So instead of like learning about, the French Revolution or kind of like these micro moments in, human history, it looks at from the Big Bang up until now, looking into like the near future. And so it's very fun to kind of like, and it's multidisciplinary too, which is really fun because it'll start off and you're learning a lot about physics and astrophysics, and then you get into chemistry as chemicals evolve, and then how do planets form, and then from there it gets into early life, and then just gradually shifts, and then you get into a period of like human prehistory, and it's very interesting to like learn kind of like the whole evolution of these and then kind of taking like a broader scope of kind of like what does this period of history look like? How does it change? How do we shift? Like what are the modalities and the kind of the increasing orders of complexity and how that changes? So it's that's I've listened to that one once before, and I'm kind of going through re-listening to it kind of with different ears now, and so it's really informative and just kind of a different take on history books that like I've had in the past. So I highly recommend that one, especially the audio. Of course, it's very good.
How do you decide when you'll listen and when you'll read?
I will say when it comes with like fantasy books, like especially when they start talking about um you need maps or ideas of like what things physically look like that are often included like in the print materials.
Hmm.
So it's a lot easier to have that kind of in your mind if you're
Yeah.
like reading it, and especially like if there are a lot of names, the names are similar, like hearing it pronounced, like that can get a little confusing on the audiobooks. There have been audiobooks where I've started them and I go, okay, I can't do this. I need to actually read it. So
Okay.
the Three Body Problem, for instance, like that was a series where I started listening to it on audiobook and I got through the first book just fine. But getting into the second book, I was like, okay, I can't do this. I actually need to see what's printed on the page in order to get through this. Yeah. And then the same thing for like nonfiction books. If there's diagrams or charts or other things that would kind of bring the material to life a little bit
Hmm.
more, it's good to see those.
Okay. Do you have a favorite book, work of fiction or nonfiction?
Yeah, so I would say for fiction, it would probably be the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. There's
Hmm.
a lot that I love about that. It's informed a lot of the art in my office. Those two things are from the Dark Tower. Some of my tattoos are from the Dark Tower. So there's a lot that I really enjoy about that story. And then similarly, uh, Demon Haunted World, Candle in the Dark by Carl Sagan, probably my favorite nonfiction book.
All right, moving on to eating. I know you enjoy eating. What do you like to eat?
I will try almost anything,
Hmm.
but like in terms of what I really like, Mexican food is top up there. I
Hmm.
like American food, like burgers are like my go-to kind of comfort food. Good pizza, and I'm putting good pizza with an asterisk on there because yeah, there's a lot of really bad pizza out there. Um, and then yeah, like I've got a big sweet tooth as well too, so any kind of like good desserts or ice cream, like I'm a fan of.
So talk a little more about pizza. What's good pizza for you?
So I don't get into the debate about like what's better, New York or Chicago, where it's like no no they're both good. I like a New York slice, like it's
Yeah.
good for what it is.
Hmm.
But like if I were to order a pizza, what I really want is probably the Chicago tavern style pizza, and there you know a number of different places in Chicago to get really good pizza. But yeah, that thin crust tavern style is what I like. Deep dish is fine. Like it's I have my favorite deep dish places that I'll go to, but it's one of those things that, it's good for when company comes in from out of town and they want to try it, and you can
Yeah.
take them to, Pequod's or any of the other places that are really good. But then there's also kind of weird pizza-like things. Like Chicago has the pizza pot pie, which is really good. There's I'm forgetting the name of the restaurant that they serve it at for some reason, but it's pizza adjacent, but it's very good. You go in there, it's underground in this restaurant where I think Al Capone hid out during the Valentine's Day massacre. So there's it's very very old wood in there and everything like that. And it's fun when you go there. You don't actually put your name in, you put your face in. So the guy at the front, like he'll remember your face, and the whole time you're waiting for them to screw up and like get somebody pulled in before you that showed up or something like that. It's always perfect. They never get it wrong. They've got like really, really good food there, and the pizza pot pie is this like creation, is what I'll call it. It's like it's a pizza pot pie, and it's got giant sausage in there, giant mushrooms, and yeah, it's just delicious.
So in Chicago, where would be your favorite spot be for tavern style pizza?
The go-to is probably Rosati's. It's a chain, and they have some of those even in Wisconsin and things like that. Gosh, and then there were a couple of like really good spots like near me where I lived in Chicago, but I'm blanking on the names of them right now because it's been so long since I've been there. But yeah, like they're also like bar pies. So you can go to a bar and get a pizza, but that's gonna have like a really thin cracker crust. But like Rosati's, I think is probably like a good standard. And then any there's always like new pizza places that pop up in Chicago. So there's always like
Yeah,
every year, you know, top 10 places in Chicago, like half the places will be brand new. So it's worth
yeah.
trying them anyway. Yeah, so there's a lot of good ones.
And what's your go-to if you want to take somebody for deep dish?
The newer one is Pequod's. I've been there once. I really like it. Otherwise, Lou Malinotti's is the standby for me. Like that's the one where if somebody says, "Oh, we're getting deep dish," and they get like, you know, Uno or something, it's kind of like, "Oh, all right, that's fine." But like if they get Lou Malinotti's, it's kind of like, "All right, we gotta lose. That's good."
Okay, got it. Now, if I were come visit you in Madison, and we wanted to go out to eat, where would you take me?
Ooh, I think there are a few different places that I would take you. I see. I wish that like I would have been able to like lure you out to Ventura because I know there's a couple taquerias there that I think would have been really up your alley. But
Yeah.
like if I took you to Madison, like I'd imagine that it'd have to be a food crawl, like because that's one of the things that I know that we've done several times together is go on different food crawls and try little things from different places. But
Mhm.
I think probably going to Zippy Lube. They have really good donuts and fried chicken, so you can get both of those things there. Oddly enough,
Yep.
probably would take you to Stadium Takeout because they've got really good and interesting takes on the Philly cheesesteak, and they do a lot of things that you would expect at like a kind of greasy spoon type place, but like their own little twist on it. So those are really good. We'll probably have to figure out a sushi place to take you to, Tokyo Sushi. Think I'm trying to think barbecue wise, there are like a couple of I'd take you to barbecue in Chicago. There's some good barbecue spots in Madison, but like there's nothing that I'd really write home about necessarily. And then of course we'd have to get dessert somewhere. So probably taking you to a chocolate shop ice cream. It's kind of a local-ish Madison chain, and they've got really, really good ice cream.
Sounds good. Um, Moving on to music, do you have a favorite song or musician or concert or album?
Um, Definitely favorite artist has been Green Day. I've always been very, very attracted to Green Day's music. Like to me, they're the Beatles. So that's kind of the echelon that they're in for me.
Hmm.
But I like a lot of different types of music, but that's one that I'll go back to a lot. Same thing for Tool. They're also a very fun band to see live, just because they're all each of the different musicians are savants kind of like in their own space. And so to see them kind of blend all of that together, it's a very, very, very good show. And same thing for their albums. Like they're not any tracks that I skip on any of those. But yeah, but I like trying out like a lot of new stuff. Like that, you know, I'm not like a huge fan of country, but Orville Peck, like he's come on the scene the past, 5, 6 years. I really like his originals. Like he did also an album of covers and duets with a lot of other artists. We had Willie Nelson and some other greats on there as well too. So he's been a fun person to listen to because it's modern country a little bit. It's but like also harkens back to the old school. But then every now and then you'll hear like a little flourish he does with his voice where you're like, it's like, did he get that from Michael Jackson? Like so, there's some fun influences
Yeah.
in there. It's a really interesting listen. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Green Day song?
Oof, gosh. I'd probably have to go with Christie Road. It's from the first album that came out. Like, so I somehow I don't even remember how this happened, but I got their album before Dookie. Dookie was their big one that launched them into megastardom.
Yeah.
I got Kerplunk before that. Like that was like their second album, and I got really into that one. And so I destroyed that CD listening to it so much. And so that track for whatever reason, like I really liked it. And there was a Christie Road, like where I lived in Michigan at the time. So like I don't know, there was I'd always be listening to that track about the time that like I drove by it, like in the mornings on the bus going to school. So that's seared into my memory pretty good. Yeah.
What's the first record that you bought?
Um, Well, I know I know the first cassette, CD, and actual LP like out like record that I bought.
Okay.
So for the cassettes, which was like the first things I ever got, so I
Mhm.
got Scorpions, which Rock You Like a Hurricane and was it song about an angel. I can't remember exactly, but I had that one. And also I got Aerosmith single cassette and then Richard Marx. So I got all of those the same day. So
Mhm.
and I getting the singles was fun because it was like I didn't have a lot of money, but I'm like, ooh, you can get these for $1.99 each. So like for $10, I can come home with,
Yeah.
a variety of new music.
Hmm.
The first proper CD that I got, and when I really started getting into music, was actually the Blue album by Weezer. So like that one, and that's probably, if you have to have like a desert island disc, that's probably the one that I'd bring to the desert island. So
Hmm.
phenomenal tracks on that. And then the from like a record perspective, I was the same thing. I got two for one. So I got Steve Martin live, and so I got that record, and then I also got Iron Butterflies and Agata Vita. So
Oh,
both of those the same day, and so those are my first like actual LPs that I got.
now that came out well before you were born. How did you get into that
Yeah.
record?
So I always liked that song, and so it
Yeah.
was fun. Like I saw it there, and it was probably affordable, so I was like, "Great, that's coming home with me." And then like the Steve Martin one was one that I've always been huge into stand-up comedy and just consumed that voraciously, and
Yeah.
so I saw that and immediately was like, "Well, I know half these routines already. Let's bring these home, and I get to listen to the other ones." So yeah.
What was the last concert you attended?
The last concert was probably. I think Tool. I went to Chicago with a couple of friends to the United Center to see them perform, and it was fun because the tickets we bought said obstructed view, so we're like, you don't know how that's going to go sometimes. But really, it's because there'd be like a wire coming down, and it was an incredible seat because there was no one to the right of us. We were like looking right down on the stage, and for I don't know about for a lot of bands, but especially for Tool, it's fun to see the drummer go to work because he's so prolific and one of the best drummers in history, and so it was really good to see him just up close in action, unobstructed view of him doing his thing. So that was like one of the highlights was just like I've got just incredible highline to Danny doing his thing. So that was thrilling. Yeah.
Moving on to sports, what sports do you enjoy watching?
Growing up, I didn't really watch many until we moved to Illinois, and then of course that was the reign of Michael Jordan, so it got really easy to get into basketball.
Hmm.
It's, you grow up thinking like, oh, the team that I like is going to win. We have somebody that can turn it on any given moment, and the game is won. So it was fun growing up, like an era of Michael Jordan. So watching the Bulls, was just phenomenal. I got really into basketball at the time, and so for the '90s, I watched a lot of basketball. And then, when I moved, not so much because it was hard to keep track of the games and things like that. But when I did move back to Illinois for college, started getting more into football because the Bears were never very good growing up for me. So I know they last won in like 1985, and so like that was I was 3 years old at the time, so I don't have a lot of memories of that.
Right.
So they've kind of stunk my entire life. They had a good year here and there.
Hmm.
So it's really refreshing actually this year to have like a really good football team. So it's yeah, I'm gonna be pretty obnoxious seeing my friends and family at Christmas this year, most of who are Green Bay fans. So I'm looking forward to
Well,
that.
the Bears had one Super Bowl appearance in there, right? Along the
Yeah,
way.
2006, I
Okay.
believe they played the Indianapolis Colts, and it was one of those where it's like I don't know how we got there. We had like an incredible defense, and the offense was kind of
Yeah.
it's weird because you were always kind of scared when the offense took the field because you're like, all right, there's going to be an interception or some bumbling idiocy is going to happen. Never felt any confidence whatsoever, and but yeah, like when the defense got on, you're like, great, defense is on the field. We might be able to score now. So that's how that season
Yeah.
went. This one's very different. It's like, oh, we have like a defense that's holding together and a very competent offense. And apologies to the Detroit Lions for stealing Ben Johnson, but he was the coach that I hoped we would hire, and it's worked out better than I could have thought.
Worked out great, So we not only gave you Ben Johnson, who's been doing a fine job, but yesterday the Lions lost, and that let the Bears clinch, didn't it?
That's right. Yep. But yeah, but the Detroit Lions did stomp the Bears very early on in the season, so I'll be interested. That's the last game of the year to see
Yeah, the
how
last game probably will be different, I would predict.
Yeah. Well, but it's also funny too, because it's like if the Bears magically beat the 49ers, which is not a given by any means, will they rest their starters on the game with the
Oh,
Lions? Like, and if so,
interesting.
like, yeah, so there's a lot to kind of figure out these
Yeah.
next couple of weeks. But
Well, based on losing yesterday, if the Lions win the last two games and Green Bay loses the last two games, the Lions will be in the playoffs.
yeah,
So Not that we need any added incentive to root against Green Bay, but
I
we sure
was
do
gonna say I'm
now.
fine with that. I'd rather play the Lions again than play Green Bay. Like, yeah.
Do you have a favorite athlete? You mentioned Michael Jordan or other athletes of yours that are favorites?
Yeah, I will say my favorite. So for basketball, it was probably Steve Kerr because
Hmm.
there's a lot that I liked about him, primarily because he was a shorter guy, really good at three pointers, and didn't play good defense. So I identified quite a lot with that when
Yeah.
I play basketball. So it's like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm not good at defense, but I can shoot threes really well. So I really liked his style of play. It was very fun, bit player to come in off the bench to kind of hit those threes at the end of the game and things like that. So very clutch. I really liked him. And then from like a football perspective, I think just growing up, my favorite guy is probably Charles Tillman, who inventor of the peanut punch. So I think, just remarkable watching him play. One of my favorite things to do is watch him play against like Calvin Johnson twice a year because they had incredible battles. Because Calvin Johnson's, in my opinion, one of the better wide receivers to ever play the game, and just the battles that they would have against each other and just like I love like all there's tons of these slow motion videos of like Calvin Johnson going up to catch a ball and you can see like Charles's eyes tracking the ball and knocking it out like at the very set like it's I love that kind of stuff because there's just a complete technician. Should also be in the Hall of Fame because he completely reinvented the sport. There's not a Sunday that goes by that you don't hear somebody use the term peanut punch, some analyst where somebody comes in bops the ball out while they're playing. So
How
I just really love watching him play.
about a favorite sports memory?
Ooh, as a Bears fan, there's not a lot. A very recent one I'll say from Saturday was probably watching, so this whole season there's been now six come from behind victories in the fourth quarter, many within the last seconds of the game or walk off, touchdowns, things of that nature. So I will say beating Green Bay at home to finish off this year with them was really good. So I love that. I love our new quarterback. Caleb's great. Just watching him be completely clutch in those end of game moments. It's not used to that feeling as a Bears fan. But I will say, but yeah, from like watching the Bulls, like there were so many good memories. I mean, being a Steve Kerr fan, it was great. Like when Michael goes up to take that last shot, and at the last moment, because he's being double teamed, he ditches it off to Steve to knock it in. And I really enjoyed like the celebration at Grant Park in Chicago after that. Each of the players went up to get to talk a little bit about that, and I really appreciated Steve going up there. And this was about the time that Michael had that commercial where he's like, "I've been asked to take a game-winning shot, and I've failed this many number of times." And Steve talks about that. He's like, "Well, Michael came to me and said, Steve, I've been asked to take the shot, and I've lost so many times. I really want you to do this one." So it's fun seeing, be like, "Yep, no, no, of course, we want the game in Steve's hands." But so that one, but then yeah, so many moments with Michael where you're like, I can't believe that happened. Like the flu game, just watching him like just play through that was like, oh my gosh, that's somebody who's not going to take a rest day for any kind of game. Yeah,
Yeah, he was not somebody that participated in load management.
not at all.
Well, you can also they also have a connection to you with Caleb Williams. Caleb played high school football at Gonzaga High School in
Oh,
Washington,
yeah,
D.C., which is where my son was the assistant coach for many years for basketball. So he
nice.
was proud of his alumnus from Gonzaga going on to greatness both in college and now in the pros.
I look forward to him bringing home many Super Bowls. Yeah, absolutely.
He's a good one. All right, let's talk about comedy. You've already mentioned Steve Martin. Do you have a favorite comedian, comedy film or TV show?
Um, I will say comedian wise, like it changes. Like I like a lot of them. Like they're and it ebbs and flows too, because like comedians will come out with a great album and they might, peter off and like the next couple might not be great, but they'll come back around. Right now, I really like gosh, Taylor Tomlinson, she's fantastic. I really like who else did I see recently? Nate Bargatze, he's really good. John Mulaney, I really like him. Stavros Halkias, like he's also pretty hilarious. And yeah, so like a lot of these guys, but like the classics as well too. So it's Steve Martin. I love like old TV shows and stuff like that. So I grew up watching like the what was it Dana Carvey show that went on for like a year that was just absolutely bananas. And there's really, I think it informed my sense of humor, a lot of that, because like they're like somehow this show that should have been on like at 11 or 12 o'clock at night was put on right after like family TV, and so like that's burned into my brains.
Yeah.
So just like completely absurd SNL type things. Also really enjoyed um, early days of like Amy Poehler, for instance. Like she was on the Upright Citizens Brigade, which was like a sketch comedy group that eventually had a TV show on Comedy Central in the late 90s. And it was fantastic because no one knew who they were at the time, but it was again very absurdist sketch comedy. And I remember one day finding out that they were going to be playing at like a local college near me. So I was like, I have to go see this show. And so it was really fun seeing them bring some of that to the stage as well and like recreate some of the bits there and just especially some of the really complex ones. It's just magical seeing that. And then of course see them go on to SNL and Parks and Recreation and things like that. It's been fun.
Yeah. And any comedy films stand out in your mind?
Um, I enjoy them, but like, just as they come out, there hasn't been anything recently, but like I really like, Old School and Tropic Thunder was like a really good one. Tom Cruise's dancing and that was phenomenal. So it proves that he should have been a comedic actor this entire time. Yeah, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, like there's plenty of classics in there,
Yeah.
but yeah.
All right. Who's the best at making you laugh?
Um, the best at making me laugh. I think it probably changes because, like, but like I really like. I will say this, like, and it's maybe even not like movies or professional comedians or anything like that. But like, if you send me like just stupid videos, like, will get me to crack up more than just about anything else. Like, I really like the element of surprise. So I like pranks. So like for me, like growing up, like I was an impressionable teenager, really liked the Jackass show and movies. So like those were always fun. But yeah, no, there's just like stupid TikToks that people will send me or that like I'll find on my own. Like those are really good. Like my favorite one that will never not make me laugh is probably somebody working quietly reading or something like that, and all of a sudden somebody will play James Brown where it's like like and it starts like really kicks in and they're just startled. Those will never not get old. So that for whatever reason tickles some funny bone inside of me. Yeah.
And who are you able to crack up?
Usually my kids,
Hmm.
like, because I know what will get them to laugh. It's pretty easy. It evolves over time, so it's fun trying to kind of see what will get them to laugh. But yeah, I think it's pretty fun to be able to get them to giggle. Yeah.
All right. It's time for a story. What story have you picked out?
So I would just say that like I think I told you a little bit about this at KM World, but like I thought I'd share one with you and I, and it just getting into the world of knowledge management was very interesting for me because what I had been doing at the time, like with like online communities and bands and things like that, and translating that into the real world and getting into, okay, well, here's theory and here's practice. I was really lucky too, being in the Chicagoland area, that KM Chicago was an organization that was active at the time, being able to participate in those events, go see them live in person. And it just so happened that the first one I went to see, and this was before, because they had them at both downtown Chicago location and in Allstate in the northern suburbs. That one was easier to get to, but there's always less people attending that one. So I should have gone to the one in downtown Chicago from what I learned. But still, like I remember finding that conference room because you were actually going to be the guest that day. That was the first one that I had heard about, and I was like, all right, I'm attending this. And so furiously writing down the notes from you, that like the lessons learned. I'm like, okay, these are real examples of how to do knowledge management. I absolutely loved getting to see that because up until that point it was a lot of theory and reading in books and things like that and going, okay, this makes perfect sense, and seeing case studies. But and I had like a lot of dumb questions that I had written down in retrospect where, you talk about using, one type of message board, and I'm like, well, why didn't you think about using this other one? It's just kind of like, okay, in retrospect, I understand why I thought that was an important question to ask, but like, like being in practice, okay, it's not really the technology that's powering it, right? So, it was fun looking back on my notes then and seeing some of those early thoughts as I looked at knowledge management. But yeah, no, and then serendipitously again, like that's my life, being able to work with you later on at Deloitte was also really fun because, it was my first week, first couple of days in the office, and some of the team members were taking me out to lunch. And I remember Lisa Beckers had asked me, "Hey, you heard about Stan, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I think he's moving on to PwC. He's going to be down there, right?" She's like, "No, no, no, no. Scratch that. He's coming to Deloitte." And so it was like 2 weeks later, you joined the organization as well too. So I was like, "All right, this is awesome." So yeah, no, it was very fun. So I appreciate that early on exposure to knowledge management was Stan Garfield. Appreciate getting to work with you and on your team at Deloitte, and then kind of continuing on. So you've been a touchstone for me in the knowledge management space for quite a while. And I remember too, one of the funnier things is when I initially started my website, I was tracking knowledge management. I was trying to track conferences, publications, trying to link to different blogs. I did all of this. And then I discovered yours, and I'm like, oh, you're doing this, but better and more comprehensively than I am. So it's like maybe I don't have to curate everything if you've already done it. So I was like, all right, Stan's got this.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was looking that up today because I recall that before we met, I had known about you from your website. You had a website and you were blogging, and this would have been about 2007. So a year before we joined Deloitte. And at one point, I must have, read your blog. And back then, the bloggers would sort of cross-reference each other. We must have, had a link to each other in the blog roll,
Yep.
that kind of thing. But at some point, you published a post about the various resources you were assembling and curating. And I found that I commented to you, and this was in July of 2007. I wrote a comment on your blog. I found this, by the way, in the web archive. I
Of
don't think
course,
it
yeah.
doesn't live on anymore, but it was in the web archive. And I said, hey, Curtis, you may want to add these two things. And
Yep.
there were links to sites of mine, so that was interesting to discover, like bringing it out of the archives. And then the other thing that you mentioned briefly, but that we also enjoyed together was going out for food, and we did this both in Chicago and also in Philadelphia.
That's
And I
right.
remember going on a food crawl in Chicago where we went to several places. I think we probably did we go to Smoke for barbecue? I think that was
Yep.
one of the stops, and I think we also went somewhere for dessert. We probably went to a few different places, but it was always good to find someone who would join me on that because there are people, if you mention you're going on a food crawl, they give you a funny look like, well, what's that? Why would you want to do that for? And then there was the time in Philly where we went out and had several different cheesesteaks. So it was always good to
Right.
have a food loving companion when we had to go to Deloitte related events.
I
So
do
in any
think that I
case,
should learn a
anything
lesson,
else?
and
Go ahead.
I was going to say I just need to learn my lesson and pace myself with some of those, right? So, having a couple bites of this and that, and then saying, okay, I'll save it until the next one, because yeah, you load up at the first good place, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't eat the custard because I'm too full. I might explode.
And I also recall an incident that you and I were in, I think, a place in Delaware, and we saw someone at another table that was taking the pizza eating challenge, where if they ate together, were able to eat this gigantic pizza in an hour or less, it was free. Do you remember this?
I do, and I remember buying a shirt there because it was it had a cow on it. It has something to do with like how fat the cow was, is as fat as our cheesesteak, something along those lines. I'm like, well, I need to have that shirt, obviously. Yeah.
And as I recall, they did complete the challenge successfully, but it was mostly through the efforts of one of the two gentlemen ate
Like,
most of the
got
pizza. The other guy had given up, but the other one pulled through. So, in any
it.
case, that was fun. And now I've also mentioned to you that coming up next year, there will be a food crawl in Milwaukee. So I hope that you'll join me for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I saw the Facebook group. I'm looking at it. I'm interested to see what the final lineup of places looks like, and to run that. I've got some friends in Milwaukee, so I'll get their opinions on it. Be like, all right, where should I eat more versus less? Maybe you've already been to some of these places.
Or you may even have suggested additions to the list. When they came to Detroit a couple of years ago, I was surprised that they didn't go to a Coney Island as part of the food goal. I go, how can you come to Detroit and not do that? And the guy was from
Right.
Chicago that was the organizer, and he goes, well, I don't like Detroit hot dogs. I like Chicago dogs. Well, that's fine, but there are people who expect to try a Coney Island when they come to Detroit.
When I go somewhere, I want to get something that I can't get anywhere else, right? Or you want to get the authentic version of it. Yeah.
And now that you mentioned, I think we also had some food together here in Detroit, didn't we? Go to Slow's Barbecue and yeah,
We did,
okay.
yeah, we
So
went to Slows for sure.
we've had several cities that we've had food adventures on. Is there
That's right.
anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap up our interview today?
I think that, definitely looking forward to more food crawls and just kind of see, where knowledge management goes in the future. So it's fun to track kind of the evolution of everything, especially in this world of agentic AI and kind of what happens next. So we'll see. But yeah, I will say too that like you know, I miss the days of blogging because I felt like you get deeper level conversation, engagement, and thoughts from folks versus a lot of the social media. So that whether things shifted to Twitter at a certain point, and now it's mostly on LinkedIn, and there's better engagement there. But like, there's just seems like the idea of like likes and retweets and things like that just became really easy, and like the actual engagement kind of like went away. So part of me like laments that what we've lost from like that or the early 2000s with blogging and the community space there. But maybe things change as we revolt against AI and want
Well,
real
yeah,
human thoughts again.
I feel the same way. There's lots of people on LinkedIn doing lots of sort of trivial level posts and comments and likes and replies, but not a lot of in-depth writing. So what I found is, I write an in-depth article on LinkedIn once a month, but most people are not doing that. Mostly it's very short burst or it's just responding to something, not even taking the time to read the articles that people like me will post, but mostly just responding to the headlines or the text in the initial post, not the full article.
Yeah, it's like this sounds good. Thumbs up.
Right.
Yeah, no, and it's always interesting too. And I guess this even happened back in the blogging days where you spend a lot of time putting together a thought or theory and constructing something, and you might get crickets or like a few thoughts or replies, things here and there, and then sometimes you just fire something off like on a whim, and that will get like the most level of engagement. It's like I don't really understand how any of this works. So
Well, Curtis, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure having you as a guest, and look forward to hooking up with you for some food in the future.
absolutely looking forward to it, Stan. Cheers.